Joni hidden diary contradicts their claim that Marcus Lamb's death was a tragedy. Secret passages, startling admissions, and rumors of treachery that nobody anticipated. While the cameras were rolling, what was Joni concealing? What did Marcus learn just before he passed away? Everything they created may be destroyed by this diary. Additionally, once. You will never see Joan the same after hearing what's within. Keep an eye out. The Christian community was devastated to learn of Marcus Lamb's death in November 2021. He was the resolute voice behind Daystar, a guy who people viewed as a representation of hope and faith who defied fear even in the most trying circumstances. People admired him because they thought he could help them get through difficult times. Family, friends, and onlookers were shocked and in mourning after his apparent unexpected death from COVID-19 complications. Even among those close to the Lamb family, however, silent rumors began to circulate as the days went by. Some people thought the timing was odd. Others claimed that the subsequent events simply didn't feel right. Marcus' passing was viewed as more than just a personal tragedy. Some people perceived it as the turning point in Daystar's future and the Lamb family's history. We now move on to Texas, where Marcus Lamb, the controversial CEO of Christian television, passed away following his fight with COVID-19. This past year, the conservative televangelist made news when his network, Daystar, devoted hours of broadcast time to groups and individuals opposed to vaccinations and lockdowns. Behind the public mourning, inquiries started to be made. Why did it seem like Marcus was gone, and so many changes were occurring so fast? Why did seemingly inappropriate decisions begin to surface? Was Marcus' passing merely a sad occurrence, or did it pave the way for others to follow? Many people found it difficult to embrace these ideas. They didn't want to think that something might be amiss. Marcus was a man of faith, and his wife of more than 30 years, Joni, was regarded as his life and ministry partner. However, rumors that suggested more serious issues within the family started to circulate after his death. People close to them started talking about personal struggles, conflicts, and times when their flawless public persona didn't reflect reality. There were rumors that Marcus' death had more to it than disease. The time was crucial. People wondered whether his passing had spurred secret plans or changes that some had been anticipating but could only proceed with when Marcus was no longer around to object. Though they weren't always audible, the murmurs became more frequent every week and eventually evolved into private discussions in family circles, internet forums, and church hallways. Joni described the agonizing moment she experienced at the hospital and Marcus last night when she was told, "Look what you have done to this family." It was an emotionally charged statement that alluded to pre-existing family rifts that had been exacerbated by bewilderment and loss. Unquestionably, losing Marcus was painful, but it also seemed to be a sign of a deeper sadness that had been there for years. "I was caring for Marcus during our final night together at the hospital. At approximately 3 a.m, she informed me that she simply stared at me in this dimly lit room. I remember messaging my mother and saying, 'I can't do this anymore. I told God, you feel the pain of my heart. Me and my child are ruining this family.' She looked at me while I was serving and said, 'Look what you have done to this family.' I also added, 'I know, my God, you're protective of me.' That was my last night. You'll get me out of here." He dies the following day. Unable to accept the choices being made in the wake of Marcus' passing, several family members began to distance themselves. Others made an effort to keep things together for the ministry's sake, but it was soon apparent that confidence was beginning to erode. Once unified in their religion, people were now privately interrogating one another in an attempt to understand what was actual and what was just a skillfully crafted picture for the camera. Behind closed doors, the rumors became louder as the world witnessed a ministry trying to move on and a family in mourning. A new, frightening storyline started to take shape as questions about the decisions being made, connections developing too quickly, and family conflicts that were no longer concealed surfaced. Did Marcus' passing mark the untimely demise of a devoted leader? Or was it the instant that a storm that had been lurking in the shadows came to light? Many individuals felt that there was more to the story, something deeper that needed to be discovered, something that may alter their preconceived notions about Marcus, his family, and the legacy he left behind because of the rumors surrounding his death. Many people anticipated that Joni Lamb, Marcus Lamb's widow, would take a back seat, grieve, and regained her balance before proceeding. She had, after all, worked with Marcus for more than 30 years to establish a family and a ministry. They were regarded as a devout Christian couple who publicly shared their faith and led Daystar together. However, as the weeks stretched into months, people began to notice something that didn't match their preconceived notions. Joni wasn't only going along. She was on the go. She was accompanied by Dr. Doug Weiss, a Christian counselor who specializes in helping people recover from sexual addiction and marital problems. It appeared benign at first. Doug was known for helping people who were grieving. Joni, a sorrowful widow, was attempting to adjust to life without Marcus. However, rumors soon started to circulate that this was not merely a professional or friendly relationship. It was happening far more quickly than anyone had anticipated, and it was something more profound and intimate. One afternoon, I went to Daystar to get something from the cafe. I had my toddler with me, and there was something in the green room. We stopped taking her there as I could tell she was afraid now. She was at home with our nanny. However, I wanted to pick things up quickly this one time. I enter. The time is afternoon. I assumed the green room would be empty. And it's awful when I bring her along. I go to get that food box, and as you may imagine, his wife and my child were quite busy. Fear. Her entire body became limp, and she collapsed heavily beneath the table. I took hold of her tiny body. I bumped into the automobile after picking her up. It was traumatic, and I recall sharing it with other family members, including people I trusted. "I'm not bringing my child here," I said. Doug filed for divorce in January 2022, 2 months after Marcus passed away from his more than 30-year married wife. The timing instantly sparked suspicion. People questioned how a man who gave marriage restoration advice to others could leave his own marriage so abruptly. The relationship between Joni and Doug grew evident as they were observed spending more and more time together. It seemed premature to many. Marcus had hardly been buried. Nevertheless, Joni was prepared to defend her developing relationship with Doug to anyone who inquired. In public, she referred to Doug as a blessing who gave her courage and consolation during one of the most trying times in her life. Others, however, were unable to ignore the story's flaws. How could healing and sadness so swiftly become a new romance? How could a therapist who decided to dissolve his own marriage while providing consolation to a widow, while having advised others to fight for theirs? Joni family battled the situation behind the scenes. Joni's decisions started to be openly questioned by her daughter-in-law Susie and son Jonathan. Their suspicions went beyond her friendship with Doug. They were doubting the soundness of the choices being made inside the household and Dar's guidance. They felt that the ministry they had worked so hard to establish was now overshadowed by controversy, and that the family was being ripped apart. There were rumors that Joni and Doug's relationship had started earlier, under the surface, when Marcus was still alive, rather than simply after his death. Joni refuted these allegations, stating that prayer and shared faith were the foundation of her relationship with Doug. Many people weren't persuaded. The tension was heightened by Joni's fervent defense of Doug in the leaked audio recordings, in which she insisted that nothing improper had occurred. Even as the rumors persisted, Doug's own behavior fueled the flames. He was well known for assisting couples in their healing, but it appeared that he was suddenly taking on a position that made it difficult to distinguish between partner and counselor. It was perplexing to many who had relied on him as a wise counselor because it appeared that he was disregarding the counsel he had previously supplied to several couples. People questioned if his actions were motivated by self-interest or if he genuinely wanted to aid Joni's recovery given how quickly he moved on and aligned himself with her. The criticism increased as Joni and Doug's relationship came to light. Individuals who felt deceived by what they perceived as deceit and a disrespect for Marcus' legacy, and they started to distance themselves from Daystar. The Christian community, who had seen Joni as a strong, devoted wife and leader, was torn. If she was ready to move on so fast, could they trust her judgment? Given that Doug was now involved in a relationship that seemed to go against all he had, could they trust him? Preached. Joni, on the other hand, stuck to her guns. She talked about how she had never experienced love and support until she met Doug, who she said genuinely saw and appreciated her. She presented their connection as a gift from God, creating beauty out of ashes amid a period of excruciating suffering. However, many found that this explanation was insufficient to allay their concerns. The familial conflicts that came next just made matters worse. The Lamb family's personal hardships came to light when Jonathan and Susie decided to publicly criticize Joni. The world may now see accusations of treachery, concerns about ministry leadership, and personal suffering. Daystar supporters were stuck in the middle, not knowing what to think or who to believe. Once centered on faith, healing, and family, the ministry was now clouded by dissension and controversy. With every new occurrence, the murmurs that had begun following Marcus' passing became more intense and evolved into candid conversations concerning the moral character of Daystar's leaders. Timing was no longer the only question. They concerned faithfulness, trust, and whether or not individuals in positions of authority were actually living up to their ideals. Did Joni and Doug have a sincere relationship? Bond created during a period of grief? Or was it something that had begun in the shadows long ago? Was Doug really there to help? Or was he exploiting a helpless widow to further his own agenda? Many people wondered if they would ever really know the answers to these unanswered questions. Doug and Joni remained by one other's sides. Their relationship turned into a sign of betrayal for some and hope for others. Ultimately, their quick-paced romance did more than just spark curiosity. It made people reevaluate their beliefs about love, grief, and what it really meant to be honest in the face of adversity, challenging the faith of those who had put their trust in them. I responded, okay, now I'm going to have to go back, after they showed me certain documents, emails, texts, and other things. And I'm going to do that this morning to hear their side. And talk to Jonathan and Susie. However, I will not continue to go back and forth in the same manner. What they showed me I saw. Both sides of the story were told to me. While I was speaking with Jonathan and Susie, I had some spiritual feelings. It's true that I experienced some emotions when I visited Daystar. Additionally, I will post this interview today. Hey, I'm going to post the interview because that's the fair thing, the right thing. People can feel whatever they want to feel about it. I'll let everyone analyze, critique, and break it up before creating the third and last video in which I share, what they showed me, It was like, I have to go talk to Jonathan and Susie and then I'm going to get their response to, the things that they showed me. I had already begun talking to them about it, and I was going to make the final video and wash my hands of it. The Lamb family was already experiencing intense sadness following Marcus Lamb's passing. A storm, however, ensued. They didn't anticipate it. Whispers, private worries, and brief family discussions attempting to make sense of the situation were the beginning. However, it wasn't hidden for long. Private suffering quickly gave way to accusations in public. In front of everyone, the family that had once been together now appeared to be disintegrating. Joni Lamb, the formerly helpful spouse. Her mother, who had a reputation for supporting Marcus no matter what, was thrust into a debate that went much beyond grief. Questions were aroused by her immediate bond with Doug Weiss, but her own children's response, particularly that of Jonathan and Susie, was what really made family conflicts a public spectacle. The son of Joni and Marcus, Jonathan had been raised in the ministry, working side by side with his parents and serving as Daystar's leader. He had witnessed his parents' selflessness and the way they established a network that had a profound impact on millions of lives. Jonathan therefore anticipated that his family would come together, help one another, and collectively celebrate his father's memory once Marcus passed away. Instead, he witnessed a string of choices that were inconsistent with the principles they had always held. Joni's intimacy. Jonathan felt betrayed by the speed of their relationship with Doug and her will to openly defend it. Her moving on wasn't the only thing at stake. It has to do with the speed and the apparent secrecy of everything. It seemed to Jonathan that his mother was leaving behind the ministry and family they had established with Marcus in favor of a new existence. Additionally, they discovered themselves outside of the very family they had always been a part of when Susie began to ask questions. There was more conflict behind the scenes than merely Johnny's decisions. The family would be even more shaken by the more serious accusations. Accusations against Jonathan and Susa's small daughter, as well as charges against Pete, a reliable person in the Daystar ministry. The Lamb family was abruptly thrown into a scenario that was not only devastating but also extremely complex. It was every parent's worst fear. In addition to attempting to handle the family and ministry politics that accompanied the accusations, Jonathan and Susie had to protect their daughter. They were resolved to pursue justice because they trusted their daughter's account. However, they encountered opposition as well. There appeared to be an attempt to keep matters quiet, preserve Daystar's reputation, and prevent public controversy in place of swift and obvious action. More than anything else, this betrayed Jonathan's confidence. How could a family and a ministry that advocated for truth-seeking and safeguarding the defenseless be reluctant to defend a member of their own family? How could supporting a distressed youngster and her parents be more important than maintaining a positive public image? The situation became intolerable for Jonathan and Susie, who were forced to disagree with Johnny and the family hierarchy. When I married Dr. Doug Weiss, who has been such a joy to me, Daystar, and the rest of my family, Jonathan's dissatisfaction at not getting his way only grew. As a mother, I can tell you that. Grandmother, I adore my family, so this scenario breaks my heart and makes me very unhappy. I adore every one of my kids. I cherish my grandchildren. We've been working together for so long, and I love it. Additionally, I had thought that we could have worked things out privately. However, Jonathan has now left me with no option except to speak up. We have devoted our lives to spreading awareness, as everyone is aware. Jesus' love. And it is quite sad to see my son Jonathan and his wife attack it. I would like to reassure you that every accusation being made about my late spouse and me is wholly untrue. For her side, Joni refuted the accusations and supported the family's activities. She maintained that all matters were appropriately resolved and that the charges were untrue or inflated. She insisted that she loved all of her children and grandkids very much and openly expressed the hurt she felt seeing her family split. However, many people believed that her statements were insufficient in light of the acts, or lack thereof, that followed the accusations. The Christian community, which had previously praised the Lamb family and AR, started to wonder what was actually going on behind the scenes as the narrative came to light. People took sides in an attempt to piece together a story that seemed more complicated with each new revelation, fueled by the public pronouncements, leaked audio, and social media posts. A family that was in great pain was at the heart of it all. Feeling deceived by the family that was meant to defend them, Jonathan and Susie were fighting for their daughter. Joni was attempting to go on with her life and justify her decisions while observing the division of her family around her. And many now questioned Doug's participation in the family's disunity, although previously he was regarded as a valued advisor. Betrayal accusations extended beyond familial relations. They went right to the heart of what Daystar meant to a lot of people. It was more than just a TV network. It represented ministry, family, and faith. For many who had believed in and supported it for years, it was terrible to see it entangled in a web of sinister accusations, family conflicts, and private scandals. It was impossible to ignore the seriousness of the accusations, particularly when a kid was involved. Attempts to resolve the matter discreetly only served to heighten suspicions of a cover-up, and calls for independent inquiries were greeted with resistance. People who had previously been close allies began to doubt if the Lamb family's authority was legitimate. Every social media post and every headline revealed a family attempting to deal with betrayal, loss, and public scrutiny simultaneously. It hurt. They were deeply divided. And the family was no longer united by the trust that had once existed. That is accurate. Additionally, I would add that because of how incredibly terrible this experience has been for us. Obviously, we cannot adequately convey what we have experienced over the past few years as we sit here. It was unbearably terrible, and I don't even want to describe the process of what that looked like. Therefore, it is true that there is freedom in not possessing. To rely on a small group of individuals, to keep pleading for justice, to have it dismissed and reduced, and to just run into a dead end or wall. There is contentment and tranquility. We really wanted to make a short video when the story was released and the way people reacted to it. It felt like the doors of justice were opened for us when everyone agreed with what we parents felt. It's not the right time or location that we wish to tell our entire tale. Well, Jonathan and I just snatched up the camera and sat down to answer some questions. Tension was increased by Joni's insistence on continuing to date Doug and protecting their relationship despite the accusations that were being made against them. Many believed that Joni was choosing a fresh chapter for herself while abandoning those who were still attempting to pick up the pieces. Fragments of the previous one. The reality of a family split by suspicions, accusations, and unhealed wounds took the place of the picture of a family bound together by faith. Ultimately, the charges and sinister rumors pertaining to the Lamb family were about more than just people's personal decisions. They told the story of a family dealing with its most difficult issues in the spotlight. With every choice bearing burdens that would affect their relationships with others and the faith of people who had admired them. Following Marcus's passing, the rumors became a chorus of inquiries demanding clarification. And for a lot of people, the story was about finding the truth, pursuing justice, and comprehending how a family might disintegrate due to secrets and silence rather than about healing and faith. Joni Lamb and the Daystar family seemed to the public as a stronghold of harmony and faith. For years, audiences witnessed Marcus and Joni side by side on camera as they shared stories of hope, prayed for others, and talked about God's goodness. Their grins were comforting. Their messages were powerful, and many people resorted to their platform when they were struggling. Daystar was not only a network for Christians. The image of a couple who were devoted to God and one another served as a symbol of faith and family values. However, beneath that meticulously constructed facade lay a hidden world that was disintegrating one piece at a time. The shock of Marcus Lamb's death came instantly. Leaders offered condolences, supporters lamented, and the Christian community lamented the passing of a man who had devoted his life to using the media to promote Christianity. Joni maintained her poise while narrating stories about Marcus' life and paying tribute to him on screen. Many admired her fortitude throughout what seemed to be the most trying time of her life, and she talked about faith and trusting God even in the face of disaster. The cameras switched off. Joni had to deal with a reality that was more complicated than the picture she displayed. In addition to the burden of her own grief, Marcus's passing placed her in charge of Daystar's leadership, financial management, and upholding the public confidence they had earned over many years. The strain to maintain the ministry's viability was as intense as the pain. People started to notice changes as the weeks stretched into months. Once steady and clear in her objective, Joni now seemed to be making hurried and unclear decisions. She was still visible to the public, attempting to adjust to her new life as a widow. Actuality.